In 1940, on the beaches of Dunkirk, German tanks were closing in on British forces. At that moment, British soldier Ham Smith performed a sacred ritual in a bunker. He first cleaned the dust from his helmet, then took filtered water from a nitrogen pit, and heated the water-filled helmet over a fire. When the water started to steam, Smith opened a small tea bag and drank tea from the helmet. This moment was photographed by a war journalist and later preserved in a museum. British soldiers on the battlefield, to drink tea, came up with hardcore solutions, like welding a metal tea kettle to a tank's engine radiator pipe so they could heat water using the engine's heat during marches, allowing soldiers to drink tea immediately during breaks. British Prime Minister Churchill openly stated, for British soldiers, tea was not just a drink, but also part of their arsenal. Unassuming tea leaves had long been etched into British culture, and during the years of World War II became a spiritual symbol for soldiers. Speaking of the British tea drinking tradition, it dates back to the early 17th century. At that time, Dutch merchants first brought tea to Britain. Tea from the East was initially offered to the British royal family and used among the upper aristocracy, until 1657, when London opened its first tea house for commoners. However, tea was not cheap. It was sold for £6 to £10 when the average British worker's daily wage was only 4 pence. Buying a pound of tea required saving for a whole year. As a result, tea consumers were mostly nobles and wealthy merchants. To show off their status, they even came up with elaborate rules. Tea had to be served in silver teaware and mixed with sugar and spices. The posture for pouring tea was strictly regulated. Tea houses gradually became social hubs for the wealthy. Drinking tea became an activity to display status, with a touch of showing off wealth. However, later on, a Portuguese princess who married into Britain loved brewing a pot of tea every morning and drinking it with biscuits. When a court painter captured this scene in a portrait and displayed it, it immediately sparked a trend among aristocratic women. This new way of drinking tea in the morning became a trend among London's upper class. With the help of some royal writers, tea gradually became a luxury item. The tea-drinking habits of the British upper class gradually spread to the common people. Britons began to take an interest in tea. Some merchants saw the potential in tea and started businesses selling tea. When they learned that China was a major tea producer, they began importing tea from China. According to British library records, documents from the East India Company's tea trade in the early 19th century, tea imported from China to Britain accounted for 85% of total imports. This made the neighboring Indians jealous, so they went to great lengths to send people to China to steal tea seedlings. It's said that in 1838, botanist Robert Fortune was tasked by the East India Company. He disguised himself as a Chinese person, not only growing a long braid, but also learning to speak Chinese, and successfully infiltrated the Wuyi Mountain tea gardens, taking away over 2,000 tea seedlings and hiring 8 Chinese tea-making experts, secretly transporting them to Assam, India. Unexpectedly, from then on, the black tea produced in India became hugely popular in the British market. Because black tea was cheaper, it started to gain popularity among the British public, becoming the true national drink, black tea, and an important part of British tea culture. This was also thanks to Duchess Anna, who, out of hunger, came up with the idea of afternoon tea. In the 19th century, British aristocrats typically had a hearty breakfast, a simple lunch, and dinner not until 8 p.m. Duchess Anna couldn't stand this meal schedule habit. By 4 p.m., her stomach was growling with hunger. She didn't even have the energy to read. So she had a bright idea. She asked her maids to prepare a pot of tea, a few sandwiches and scones, and ate them secretly in her bedroom. She didn't expect to get hooked after one try. It became a daily routine. Later, she simply invited a few close friends to her home for afternoon tea. Aristocratic women dressed in elegant gowns to attend. Gradually, a refined afternoon tea tradition emerged. Duchess Anna's new lifestyle became a glamorous activity in aristocratic circles. To seem more sophisticated, some aristocratic women added more requirements, not only demanding high-quality teaware, but also intricate craftsmanship. The teaware held in hand had to be like a work of art. The types and presentation of tea snacks were also particular. For example, sandwiches had to be cut into triangles. Scones had to be served with clotted cream and jam and placed on delicate three-tiered stands. Even the process of serving tea developed a new set of etiquette. For example, not touching the cup's rim while drinking. Milk had to be poured into the cup before the tea. Tea snacks had to be taken from bottom to top, and so on. The hostess leading the afternoon tea had to personally manage the tea canister. Key: whoever got the first brew of tea was the most honored. However, ordinary British people couldn't afford such refinement. They created a more down-to-earth high tea. In the 19th century, British workers finished work at 5 p.m. They simply combined tea with their main meal, brewing black tea with milk and sugar on one side and pairing it with steak, pickles, and roasted potatoes for the day's dinner. Unlike aristocrats, they didn't fuss over teaware. They only cared about practicality, choosing sturdy, unbreakable ceramic mugs. Back then, high tea was popular among working-class families. The habit of eating food while drinking tea thus became a trend among the British public. Tea in Britain also became a bridge to break down class barriers. A University of London report on British women's tea history and social change research noted, as tea drinking habits grew, large and small tea houses for commoners appeared in London. In these places, whether an aristocratic lady or an ordinary farmer, they could sit at the same table drinking black tea. Tea house owners thoughtfully provided self-service tea snacks at affordable prices that anyone could afford. Drawn by the charm of black tea, duchesses' maids and factory workers could smile and share the same scone. The distance between them was bridged by a cup of tea. Tea houses also became a social hub for ordinary British women. By 1884, London had over 500 women's tea houses. Many women came to tea houses not only to discuss current events, but also to share life and work experiences. Some even went on to form women's rights associations. It can be said that tea not only nourished British stomachs, but also indirectly boosted women's social status. The British obsession with tea was affected during World War II. According to the British Ministry of Food records in the official tea rationing policy, due to resource shortages at the time, in 1940, the British Ministry of Food issued a tea rationing announcement that sparked nationwide discussion. The announcement stated, adults were rationed 2 ounces of tea per week. Children under 16 received no supply. This meant every British adult could only drink 3 cups of tea daily, and each cup was brewed with a small tea bag. The first cup still had strong tea flavor. The second cup, diluted with water, was weaker. The third cup was barely tea-flavored water, just water with a hint of taste. Even with limited tea supplies, it couldn't stop the British love for tea. Some housewives came up with creative ways to drink tea, in various styles. Some noble women invented blended tea, adding dried chrysanthemum flowers and rose petals to a small tea bag, brewing them together this way. It retained the tea flavor while adding new flavors, preserving the ritual of tea drinking. Some women working in factories started a tea sharing system. They agreed each person would bring some rationed tea to work daily, pooling their tea to brew a large pot. During breaks, everyone could drink from their own thermos, happily sharing the joy of drinking tea. When bombing struck across Britain, people had to take shelter in air raid bunkers. Some found ways to make the best of it, holding ceramic cups of hot tea and chatting with those around them, easing their fear of survival through laughter. The air raid shelters were lively and warm. Tea seemed to dispel the anxieties in people's hearts, becoming a hallmark of that era. Tea also played a vital role on the battlefield. They turned tea drinking into a survival skill. On the North African front in 1942, to cater to soldiers who valued tea dearly, the military invented a vehicle-mounted heater. On the tank's engine, they attached a metal container to the radiator pipe, filled with water and a tea bag. As the tank moved, the engine's heat would boil the water. When the troops stopped to rest, everyone could get hot tea from the tank. This device was quickly embraced by British soldiers. They gave it a nickname, called the Desert Barista. Tank soldier Jack Brown recalled, "Once we were surrounded by Germans for 3 days. We were almost out of water, but we still saved some to brew tea. When everyone drank that tea, we all believed we could make it through." British soldiers also hid intelligence in tea. During the Normandy landings, to secure the attack route map, agents of the 6th Engineering Division rolled the map into thin strips and hid them in wax-coated tea bags wrapped with Indian Assam tea dust on the outside. Using this trick to protect the map and avoid German inspections, this method proved effective in 1944. Agent Henry Wilson parachuted into France with this intelligence tea, but was stopped by a German patrol. He calmly pulled out the tea bag, saying he just wanted to brew a cup to stay alert. The German soldier sniffed the tea bag, believed it was just regular tea, and let him go. Wilson later recalled, "This tea bag not only saved my life, but also the lives of hundreds of comrades." On Christmas 1944, the British military did something heartwarming. They gave each soldier a Christmas tea bag, printed with wishes for triumph and strength, with a small card inside saying, "Your family awaits you for tea at home." Many soldiers kept the card as a lucky charm, carrying it in their pockets, accompanying them until the moment of victory. Since the 17th century, tea from the East has played a key role in Britain's social history. From the aristocrats' morning and afternoon tea customs to the high tea dining habits of ordinary families. And during World War II, tea was used by soldiers in innovative ways that reached new heights. Tea was no longer just a drink, but a cornerstone of British life and a cultural tradition. Over Britain's 400-year history, tea has witnessed the rise and fall of the nobility, the rise of the working class, and resilience during wartime. It brought people of different classes together and gave people hope. This is the most captivating legend of British tea.